Now, will 2015 be an easy ride for President Goodluck Jonathan? Is it signed, sealed, and delivered, that election coming up next year? And these are the two questions I put to my host today, and here's what he said. Quote, "I am a pragmatist who has learned that one can never be totally sure of how the future will unfold. But as far as 2015 is concerned, I speak for most Nigerians when I say, so far at least, that neither the People's Democratic Party, PDP, nor the opposition parties have thrown up any credible and viable alternative to President Jonathan." End of quote. Well, hello and welcome. This is 60 Minutes with me, Angela Ajitumobi. Thank you for joining me on the program today. We've gone past the second half of the year 2014. All eyes are now on one man, President Goodluck Jonathan. He hasn't said to anyone that he will be seeking a second term come next year, but his party hasn't put up any alternative, and neither have the opposition parties. And while INEC, that's the Independent National Electoral Commission, has already issued guidelines guiding that presidential election, political parties, for instance, are expected to commence their primary elections on the second day of October 2014. This means that those who wish to be president must begin to declare their intentions now. As it is, it seems that only one man is in the race, and even though he hasn't said he is, it looks like he will be seeking a second term. And that's where my host today comes in. He's a member of the Nigerian National Summit Group, a prime canvasser of the National Conference. He is the secretary of the United Niger Delta Energy Development Security Strategy, UNDEDS. He's a former member of the Presidential Advisory Committee on the National Conference, a former member of the National Dialogue Committee. He graduated from the University of Ibadan in today's Oyo State in 1976 with a Bachelor of Science degree in economics. So I'm here today to talk to him about the state of the nation, what to expect in these coming presidential elections. Of course, I'll be taxing him also on the outcome of the National Conference. Has that conference achieved what it was originally convened for? Join me after the break. I'm counting down 60 minutes with Tony URANTA in Lagos State, the southwest region of Nigeria. Welcome back. Welcome, Mr. URANTA. Thank you for continuing to honor us by coming on the program.
It's a pleasure always to be with you.
Well, let's start from that quote I gave at the beginning of the program. As far as 2015 is concerned, you say you speak for most Nigerians, neither the People's Democratic Party, the PDP, nor the opposition parties have thrown up any credible and viable alternative to President Jonathan. A lot of President Jonathan's critics will say, well, there can't be. He seems to have driven everyone away from the stage. I mean, the fear of President Jonathan now is the beginning of wisdom. From being called a somewhat clueless president, Nigerians have begun to see that this man seems to have a clue about one or two things, at least.
I don't really know, because right from the beginning, I've always had a lot of respect for the mind of President Goodluck Jonathan, and more for the heart of President Goodluck Jonathan. He's a big-hearted Nigerian. He's a man who wants peace, he wants equity, he wants fair play. Because of that, especially coming from a background of our military dictatorial past, and the fact that the immediate president after that was a bit dictatorial in his attitude, being a military general, ex-military general himself. A lot of people were not used to his attempts to stick within the confines of the rule of law, and this made him appear to some weak. However, the reason why many people are now considering him to be not so weak, I don't fully subscribe to. Partly this impeachment guilt sweeping across Nigeria.
Of course, the loss in Ekiti state as
well. Well, the loss in Ekiti, I for one, am a very unapologetic friend of Kayode Fayemi.
Yes.
But Kayode Fayemi lost in Ekiti, fair and square.
You didn't think there was technical rigging, scientific rigging, as they say? If over 100,000 members of the APC didn't get a permanent voter's card, for instance, hadn't they been technically rigged?
Let me say this.
Yes.
In Nigeria, I was campaign secretary to the MPN, the re-election of President Shagari in 1983. And we all know that Omobiriwo, who came from Ondo, from which Ekiti, the present Ekiti, was carved, crossed over to the MPN from the UPN. Interestingly, we learnt a lot about rigging in those days. And one thing that has kept recurring is that every Nigerian politician, as much as he can, as much as he is not restricted from doing so, will rig. Every party attempts to rig. And every party will complain of rigging, even where there is no rigging, or where there's no obvious rigging, if it loses. So if the PDP loses in Lagos, it will complain of rigging.
Yes.
If the APC loses in Rivers, it will complain of rigging. That is not to say that there may not be rigging.
Yeah.
But I think largely looked at, we are just looking at a phenomenon of distrust and the fact that I know what I can do, I therefore transpose it on you, expecting that you are doing the same. And anyway, if I am sure you did not do the same, I'm going to give it to the populace and say you did so, and hope that in so doing, I'll discredit you and beat you outside the polls.
Okay, so no credible or viable alternative. We know that the best international practice, democratic practice, is that if an incumbent is entitled to a second term, it behoves on the party to give it to him. Otherwise, the electorate will see that even the party doesn't believe in this man. So we can't have a viable alternative from within the PDP, for instance, can we?
Well, one would expect so. Like you said, best international practices. However, unfortunately, we have had not so good practices in Nigeria. Even in 2011, when it was said that, some people insisted that this thing is zoned to one area.
Yes.
We had people from other areas vying. And even in 2007, when we were saying it is not zoned to certain areas, we had people from those areas contesting, and they still won. Now, even in this present dispensation, we have a lot of people from within his party who are saying he does not have the right to run again. Now, if you do not want him to run, tell us whom you would like to run instead. We were the ones who helped, as Nigerians, using the Save Nigeria group as a vehicle, primary vehicle. We were the ones who said we wanted President Jonathan to assume office as acting president. Well, maybe we Nigerians will also be able to say we want something that is more open, less confined to just President Jonathan, so that we allow for better, if there are any, candidates to come up. If some people say that he has not been the best manager of Nigeria so far,
yes.
Well, who can be a better manager? Show him to us. If we as Nigerians believe that this man is better, the party is made up of Nigerians, so the party will be able to influence itself so as to change its candidates. Anyway, he has not even declared. But then he has not said he will run. The campaigns are not supposed to have started, though we are seeing all kinds of billboards, even in America. It's an interesting thing. Nigeria has an odd way of doing its business.
Yeah.
But that odd way is not new. It did not start with Jonathan, and I don't think it will end with Jonathan. So far, the PDP has not shown any attempt to bring out an alternative.
Do you think they will have the guts to do that? This is a very powerful president. You know, I'm not sure if there can be opposition within the PDP. We've seen what happened with the new PDP, you know, trying to emerge, you know, as a strong body within that original PDP. Who would dare to come out?
You see, it's interesting that the tone of this question, it really intrigues me, because up to about 2 months ago, I did not hear anybody talk about Jonathan as having a strong presidency. So I'm surprised at this volte-face that we've all undertaken to now attribute power or authority extraordinary to him. I think that he is a man who believes enough in democratic principles, such that if somebody comes out, throws himself up publicly, is so seen as an alternative, it will be foolhardy of anybody, including the president, to try to repress that person or try to exclude him from the process, because the eyes of the world would have been focused on the person.
Yes.
Right now, the world, Nigeria, is interested in knowing who are interested in managing the affairs of this country from 2015.
Yeah.
Nobody has stepped up to the bat.
So in your opinion, what factors do you think will decide the 2015 election? You think ethnicity or religion will play a role?
Ethnicity always plays a role.
Even though we pretend that it doesn't?
I think that was one of the benefits of the national conference. We got to see very blatantly that we have strong ethnic cleavages in this country. And also religion will play a role in especially the northern parts of Nigeria. With all due respect to my brethren in the north, and most of my friends are from there. The south of Nigeria is a bit more cosmopolitan or egalitarian in attitude. It accommodates dissenting views, for example, with better ease. The North, by its cultural constitution, is more of a feudal state, and so it's an authoritarian culture. It's a culture that things evolve from top down, and so they can say, this is the position and we don't want anybody to dissent to this position. I believe that even ethnicity and religion will only play so much of a role in this new Nigeria, because if we take the fact that Boko Haram, which is the key factor in today's Nigeria, has now alienated both Christians and Muslims from Islamist tendencies. Note that by Islamists, I am not referring to Muslims or non-Islam. I'm referring to extreme fundamentalist violent tendencies. Now, those tendencies are making more people look outside of their box. And when you add the fact that now that the Al-Majiri schools are becoming more popular,
that's the school set up by President
Jonathan, and the abductions are becoming more rampant. People talk about the Chibok girls. They forget the fact that before the Chibok girls, over 640 girls had been abducted by the same group. Since the Chibok girls, over 70 girls have been abducted by Boko Haram. And even beyond that, over 1,000 boys have been abducted by Boko Haram. We should not be talking about the Chibok girls. We should be talking about the abducted people, girls and boys. Now we have this spate of bombings being carried out by women. True, they have said to us they are not the Chibok girls.
But how do we know?
That they are, well, I think more importantly, how do we know that they are not abductees that have been converted into bombers even against their will?
Yes.
They could be drugged, they could be brainwashed, they could be coerced. Look at a 10-year-old child is trapped with a bomb. And they discovered this just a few days back. 10 years old. A group that now puts a bomb on a child has gone beyond the pale. Whether they had noble objectives, what they are seen now as evil, simple, pure. Yeah. Now, that on its own is going to force people to start reassessing the realities. And the dynamics that will fall out of all of this will go beyond religion and, I believe, beyond ethnicity.
In other words, people will begin to see that possibly President Jonathan has not been allowed to govern properly because of the security situation we have in the country.
I have been claiming that point for the past 3 years, that it is very difficult for you to assess President Jonathan and say he has been given a fair playing ground because he has been spending most of his time combating terrorism. I mean, I laugh when I hear people use the word insurgents, militants.
Yes.
These are terrorists. They are not bound. As I told people, stop thinking that they are in the northeast. If we do not take care, and really what care can we take? We have had an explosion in Lagos. They have caught people in Imo. They can go anywhere. They can operate anyhow. In anywhere that they can reach, they can operate. And terror, once terror is planted, it's difficult to uproot. But then the government now has to combat both with having the resources to use for legitimate purposes and having to compete with news. The government does something positive, it has to compete with the news of a bomb blast. Now, people are going to react to the bomb blast and ignore the positive
news. Yes. All right. We'll take our first break now. We'll continue from there when we come back. So join us again after the break. Welcome back. If you've just joined us, it's 60 Minutes with me, Angela Ajitumobi. On my hot seat today, Tony URANTA. Now, the APC, its coming was heralded by a lot of Nigerians. Do you think it has turned out to be the viable opposition that Nigerians were craving for? And can it defeat the PDP in 2015?
I saw the coming of the APC as a good development because I believe that there has to be a viable opposition to keep any administration or any government on its toes, because the tendency where there's no opposition is for you to sit back, believe you've got it all, and do the wrong things most of the time. Unfortunately, by the time the APC fully evolved, it was nothing more than just a mirror of the PDP. Just as the PDP now is becoming made up of members of the APC. So I really do not see much of a difference between both parties. We have heard talk of internal democracy not being fully alive in the APC. Well, I do not know how alive it is in the PDP.
Right.
So I am not so concerned about the parties as parties. However, I am concerned by the fact that the party APC now, whether inadvertently, is being linked with violence. If members of the party continue to say there will be violence, then I do not think they are seeing right.
Yeah.
Anybody that wishes Nigerians evil or wishes us ill or wants us to die because of their politics will not gain the support of Nigerians.
But the APC members would say to you that this allegation of violence, that they like violence, is something that is pushed out there by their main rivals, the PDP. Because every time there is an explosion, or any time there is any Boko Haram activity, the PDP links it automatically to the APC. And the APC says, if you repeat these lies often enough, Nigerians will begin to think.
No, if you notice, when I made my comment, yes, I intentionally did not include Boko Haram.
Yes.
I am not of the school,
yes,
that wants to point fingers without basing it on facts. I do not believe that facts have been thrown up to link the APC to Boko Haram, right, or the PDP, or vice versa. But then don't forget that the APC governors just recently met and said General Buhari was targeted in the bombing by the PDP, by the presidency. These are ridiculous statements. However, what I do know is that individuals, including the leader of the party from the Southwest,
yeah,
including a former minister of the Federal Capital from the North, have said repeatedly, if we do not win, there will be violence. Now, it presupposes that you are saying you already know how Nigerians will vote.
And you want to intimidate them?
Yes. Who are you to say you are sure? Even if a man had the intention to vote up to 7:30 a.m. on election day for a particular party, he still has the right to change his mind. He might change his mind. If you now say, those votes, we had expected 20 votes and here we are, we have only 5, therefore there must have been rigging, or now we must proceed to violence. Yeah. Who dies in violence? You and I, the common Nigerian. Children, women. It might escalate into anything bigger than even you, the proponent of that violence, had imagined. We could end up even having a civil war. We could become a Somalia. So even if it's just one life that gets lost, or one person that gets maimed in that violence, you have done a great disfavor to Nigeria. So I am not happy with certain leaders of the APC, national and regional, southern and northern, who have said repeatedly, yes, that there will be violence. I have said to them individually, directly, through proxies, etc. This is not proper. But apparently, the more I've said it, in fact, somebody said to me, as I was saying it to me, he said, well, Tony, just go and tell your friends. And I said, you are my friend. You happen to be in the APC. Yes, President Jonathan is my friend. And funnily enough, I can say this, I'm not partisan, but I will vote for Jonathan if he decides to run. Because like I said, I've not seen an alternative.
Okay, what kind of alternative are you looking for? Are you going to follow individual alternatives within the APC? For instance, if the APC throws up what you consider to be a viable alternative, say a person from the South?
No. I don't really care where the person is from, and I really do not think I will be influenced by anybody coming from the South. Yes. Southern leaders have proved to be mainly corrupt leaders, and we are not too happy with them. We are not happy with most of the people who have come out of the South. Even the serving governors, there are so many that could be doing much more much better in Nigeria right now. We do not have much value being added to even the resources that we keep clamoring for, apart from the fact that the region is beset with endemic corruption.
The president's men say that no president has done more than this president. So in terms of performance, they think he's got it all tied up neatly for 2015 if he's coming out just based on his performance. But given the insecurity in this situation in the country, you think the value of that will erode any currency he may have gained from performances?
Yes, because a lot of people really are not aware that President Jonathan has done anything at all. And I will lay the blame at the doorsteps of his image makers, his handlers. Yes. A lot of them are my friends.
Why are they not doing enough or much more?
I think there's something in management principles we call the Peter principle. You get promoted beyond your level of competence. The fact that you're a fantastic journalist does not make you a fantastic perception manager. The fact that you're a good public relations consultant does not make you a fantastic image remolder, because there's a new art to portraying people and reinventing them. President Jonathan has been reinventing himself, and I think his handlers have failed to help him reinvent himself as much as he could have. Yes. Or portray the real, the true, the new person, the new Jonathan. This is not the same Jonathan of 2011.
Yes.
He has changed, but we have not been able to see those changes highlighted in the right manner. It is not enough for you to compare him to Mandela and Obama, and sometimes it may even be negative, because you are throwing him up against people who have attained such statures that globally. So you are now asking us to compare him to them. No, that is not image reinvention.
But you are the president's friend. If you know this, many people would say, why have things not changed? Why is the president sticking with a team that fails to handle his perception properly?
The president is a politician. He's a member of or leader of a political party.
Yeah.
I can influence him only as often as I see him,
yes.
And even then, most times I talk with the president. I talk with him on social levels. I'm not I'm not an advisor to him.
Okay.
Let me make that straight from today. I do not advise Mr. President.
People would argue with you about that. Okay, so moving on from there now, the presidential elections, you've said you will vote for President Jonathan again.
Yes,
in 2015.
I will.
You've also said that if we do not succeed, I'm quoting you now, in creating a brand new constitution for this country, if we do not bring about a fully holistic and thorough re-engineering of this nation, we shall not see 2015 as one country, end of quote. I said, there go you Ijos again. You're tying this in now. If you don't vote for this man, we might not all be together again. That's the way it comes across.
No, if that's the case, let me clarify it.
Yes.
I am speaking as, first of all, a Nigerian, a very patriotic Nigerian. If by patriotic you can mean a concerned Nigerian who has paid blood and time to help keep this country together, to help move this country forward. A Nigerian who pushed for a national conference. Yeah. And who saw right from the beginning of the national conference certain arrogances that were displayed that were secessionists in nature. For example, the Lamido of Adamawa gets up in the very first week and says, I could lead my people out of Nigeria. Many people misunderstood that statement to mean like we will walk out of Nigeria. No, when you lead them, what they will do is say, our landmass
Yes.
now belongs to Cameroon. In short, they would have seceded from Nigeria. Now, right now, there are claims, even where a few people have come up to deny being involved in such actions, that there are some people who are bent on scuttling the reports of the National Conference. Now, looking at all this thing, and the fact that this country is based on a foundation of falsehood, a foundation of cheating, at least so we in certain areas, even including Southern Kaduna, for example, believe, we cannot have Nigeria continue going downhill, and we expect that it's not going to get to the bottom of the hill. We are going downhill very fast, and it will be only insanity for us to expect that we are going to do the same thing and end up with new, different results. If, as we had wanted, the Southwest came out and said, we want regional autonomy or nothing. The Southeast came out and said so. The South-South came out and said so. And the Middle Belt, to a large extent, said so. Yet, we find that that regional autonomy issue was swept under the carpet. Why? Because there was a bid to not, so to say, be seen as rocking the boat. That thing you swept under the carpet will rock the boat. It's not a question of derivation. It's not a question of the South-South. Yeah. It's a question of equity. It's a question of not equality, equity, of justice, of fairness. There has been no fairness.
I remember before the conference, the president and the Senate president all saying that the unity of Nigeria is non-negotiable.
Exactly.
Perhaps they should have left that agenda open, and then, you know, everyone would feel at ease to discuss whether or not they wanted to remain together.
The president and the Senate president cannot but say that, because they are leaders of the country. They are statesmen, or supposed to be statesmen. They cannot be seen to be talking about anything that would divide the nation. But it is impossible for you to stop anybody from introducing what he believes or feels when you are allowing to speak live on TV. He's not just addressing the conference. For example, Lamide Obadamawa was not talking just to the hall, he was talking to the world. So the words had been altered. They were not retrievable. And once the leadership of the conference did not stop him at that point, and I lay the blame at the doorsteps of Justice Kutigi.
Why?
Because he could have called the Lamido to order and said, Your Royal Majesty, with all due respect, sir, Mr. President, in convening us, told us that that is a no-go area. Please desist from continuing in that vein. If he had done that, that would have influenced the rest of the conference. The moment he lost control of it there, he lost control of the whole of the conference.
Okay. Join us again after the break.
I urge Nigerians to continue to support this president. Now roads through his transformational agenda are getting better. But with Goodluck Jonathan as president, my boss, now I can get to Benin or Warri from Ore in less than 1 hour. Power situation is getting better. With this privatization of the power sector, industries will spring up, the economy will rebound. The educational sector, yes. In the health sector, there is improvement. Improvement in the aviation sector is transparent, everybody can see it, in moving out of our airport now and coming into our airport. With Goodluck Jonathan as president, there is great improvement and times are getting better. Look at what is happening in the agri sector. You can see that very polished minister is doing all he can to make sure that agricultural products are getting to the right people.
60 Minutes with Angela. Again, answers to every question you always wanted to ask.
Welcome back. My concluding moments now with Tony URANTA. Do you still want Nigeria to remain one?
Oh yes, there can be nothing better than one united, strong Nigeria. That's what I want, that's what I hope we will have, but I do not think the portents are favoring that.
Is that why you said, I quote you now, I do not think we, Niger Deltans, will be happy with 18% derivation. We wish to control our resources through federalism. There is the likelihood that we will shut down production for our existence and survival's sake and not for political or economic reasons. We shall not die for the rest of Nigeria to live.
No, we shall not. The issue of derivation, I've said, should not have even come up at all.
Why not?
We should have been discussing federalism. In federalism, you concentrate on wealth creation, not wealth sharing. In federalism, the constituent units own their resources, human, natural, material, etc., and then pay a tax to the center.
Right.
And that is what obtained in the 60 and 63 constitutions. And Nigeria has not developed better.
That was when we flourished.
That's when we flourished. That was when we had the granite pyramids, when we had the cocoa going out and we were leaders.
So why didn't the conference talk about federalism?
Because I believe that the composition of the conference was not the best.
You didn't have dynamic people there.
Yes, we had people who were not adding value. For example, the youths that were chosen, most of them, with all due respect, were just dead weights. Many did not attend plenary sessions.
Perhaps because they thought there was a proliferation of old people. The average age of photographs we saw from the conference, for instance, were very old people.
But you see, in 1973, when we fought, my generation, my class then, in the university, when we fought against the imposition of, by the saying, would serve youth corps for 2 years, and they named some ridiculous amount. We had the military in power, youth stood up and opposed the government. If the youths in the conference had been dynamic youths like, say, Toyosi Akerele, I could name a lot of them, they would have come together, formed a bloc, and that bloc could have been listened to. Interestingly, there were one or two of them that were persuasive, that were influential. Unfortunately, they were mostly concerned with ethnic issues. The only people that were chosen, that were nominated, were elderly. Well, but then they also impacted positively on the conference, interestingly enough. However, it behoved the youth, because they are the ones whom a future Nigeria really should matter to the most, to have taken control. You don't wait for power to be given to you. If I had been their age, I would have been interested in seeing what would have happened if I could get on that floor. And even if I did not get on that floor, you can influence what is happening in the National Assembly from Lagos, from Abeokuta, from Uyo. The youths did not do what they were supposed to do other than grumble.
And if you say that, and a lot of people say there were a lot of dead woods in the national conference, then can we say it didn't achieve anything?
Oh, it did. It did. For example, we achieved two basic things. We achieved one, that every state has a right to drop its own constitution.
Really?
Yes. Now,
so when we see Osun State, for instance, with his own anthem and with his own
flag and constitution,
they've been vilified greatly for that.
It's out of ignorance. The people that vilify them know nothing about history, but then most people that vilify them are young people. And most young people in Nigeria today are not educated. There's no history being taught them. They do not realize that in Nigeria, at one time, every region had a flag, had an anthem, had a constitution. When you don't know where you're coming from, you can start judging wrongly where you are. Now, from that, any group of states can, for example, write into their constitution that we, the following number of states, wish to integrate and cooperate.
Pause. 4 states can
Yeah.
come together
And form a region.
and it will be recognized by law?
Yes, that is why, having said that the states can have the constitutions, when the states decide to voluntarily come together to integrate and cooperate, like for example the Southwest states, if they do it through Dawn
Yes.
Commission,
Yes.
the Southwest region has been created. If the South states do it,
Do the same.
the South has a region created, recognized. It would have been neater for it to be written in
Yes.
to the Constitution, national
The
Constitution,
1999 Constitution.
or the revised or the newly created one. But without that, we still have achieved what we wanted there.
Yeah.
Secondly, local governments it has been accepted consensually that local governments be removed from the first charge,
Why?
because every state should have the right to create as many local governments as it likes. It will not be responsible for those local governments. When you say that a state should not create administrative centers,
Yes.
why are you saying it? Because those administrative centers will impact on the federal revenue base, because the Constitution had linked the local governments to the federal first charge, so monies are deployed. In fact, a lot of people, we have been saying, a lot of people should shut up about the derivation issue,
Yeah.
because much more money is going into their states and their regions via the local governments.
Right.
So where you have a state that has 40 local governments, and the state was made up of what is now 3 states, it used to be 1 state, but now having broken away 2 parts, you still have 40 local governments. That's more than Lagos, Bayelsa, Cross River put together. The revenues from the federal government that go to that state through the local government is much more than what goes to the South through the derivation principle.
So that is out now.
It has been removed in the conference, agreed to by all members of the conference.
What was the knotty issue at the conference that was referred back to Mr. President?
It was derivation, and it's because, like I said, they totally misunderstood their mandates or what they should have been looking at. If you want to move a nation forward, you don't move it forward by going backwards. Derivation is not a principle of federalism. For you to have a Nigeria that's united and based on equity and fairness,
Yes.
you have to return to a federal or confederal system where everybody produces according to his ability, adds to the center according to his ability as based by law, so he pays a tax. So he now has the right to develop at his own pace, such that the northern region in the old federal republic Constitution of 63 could develop at the pace that the revered Sardauna of Sokoto decided. And they developed very fast. The western region under Awolowo developed. You had Awolowo, he set up a TV station, he said, first in Africa.
Yes.
And you had Okwara set up a TV station soon after that and say, second to none. They were competing healthily. So Nigeria was developing very healthily. It was healthy rivalry. But now it is both politics with bitterness, development with bitterness, and in short, no nationalism, just Nigeria with bitterness.
What is wrong with the North demanding for a little percentage, a national intervention, if the Niger Delta states, for instance, will have an increased derivation?
Oh, the North has a right to demand for requests for anything, and nobody denies them that right. In fact, if they want to lead the protest to ask for any increase they want. But what they asked for, what was agreed to in the conference, was a national integration fund. Now, national, they said.
Yes.
But now they started honing it, but it will only be applicable to some said the Northeast. Then some said, no, the North Central has been impacted too. Oh, then some in the Northwest said, oh, but of course you know that Kaduna and Kano has bombs gone up, which is true. So does it mean there has been nothing wrong with, say, the roads getting spoiled in a proper daily by the extra weight of tankers and trucks? That means we have been impacted in Lagos
as well.
So that fund should be applicable to Lagos also. And really, whilst people recognize me as being a Niger Delta, I'm more of a Lagosian than anything else.
And talking about Niger Delta, you've also said a more equitable, just and fair Nigeria will help us, that's the Niger Deltans, to see our way to resolving the issues of Niger Deltans, suffering caused by massive irresponsible oil and gas exploitation with its concomitant environmental despoliation that is now threatening to sink our communities. What do you mean by that?
In the recent past 6 weeks, there have been 5 recorded earth tremors in Rivers, Delta, and Bayelsa.
You're kidding me.
Yes. In Bayelsa had 3, Rivers had 1, Delta had 1.
Tremors, like earthquakes?
Earthquakes, yes. Earthquakes. Because they have measurement systems. Well, when it doesn't get to a certain level on the Richter scale, they say it's a tremor. Now, they carried out urgent investigations. They found out that it's because these multinational oil companies have been extracting oil without re-injecting gas.
Okay, so when you take out the oil, the vacuum left.
Yes.
You're supposed to pump gas in there.
But they have not been doing that, just as they have been flaring gas and other things, spilling oil and not caring, because even our leaders have been part of the corruption of oil. So they have not been concerned about what happens to the ecosystem. Now, it has now become very glaring that if we go on this way for about 6 more months, experts say, we are going to have a major earthquake somewhere in the Niger Delta. Now, that is the reason why we're talking about shutting down production. It has nothing to do with the politics or economics of derivation of federalism. We want to shut down so as to let these oil companies and governments get involved with rebalancing the system. So, because the danger now is that my island, Opobo, water is now going all over the edge, and a lot of houses, like my brother Clinton's house, is flooded all through. Now, water has got to the middle of the town, and we are below sea level. If there is any tremor in our vicinity, we are submerged.
We will cease to exist.
We cease to exist. And don't forget that when there are these big floodings in other countries, we see helicopters getting people off. We see boats.
Rescue.
Do we have search and rescue systems? In short, it will not be just our landmass ceasing to exist. It might mean the extinction of tens of thousands of people.
Thank you very much, Mr. URANTA, for coming on the program again with me. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. Always a pleasure.
And that's it for this week. Don't forget to watch this program, if you will, on our YouTube channel, www.youtube.com/TEDTV60. That's www.youtube.com/TEDTV60. I'm Angela Ajitmobi. I thank you for the pleasure of your company.